All right, welcome to Find Your Next Six-Figure Infill Deal for Friday, June 26, 2026. Today we have another cottage village over in Northwest Boise. It is actually kind of a unique area. There's an existing house that actually backs up to a golf course over there. So kind of a unique property, and it also has another cottage village that's currently it'll start construction actually this summer, just like 600 feet away. So it's kind of a unique opportunity where we'll have some really good comps once this one starts construction as well. So I'm going to talk a little bit today about financing for these types of projects, because that's probably one of the biggest questions that comes up when I talk to investors and realtors about development projects. So the way financing works on development projects, so something like this where there's an existing house, you can typically get a traditional mortgage on, whether that's an FHA or VA or conventional mortgage. There is some things that come into play later on down the road, but you can kind of use that leverage to buy it initially on a property like this. Or if it's a land deal, there are some lenders out there that'll lend on anywhere from 50 to 75% of loan to value. So you put 25 to 50% down on just land deals. Ideally, if it's just raw land, you actually buy them cash because it helps down the road with not having as much additional cash expenditures. So, and it's just less risky if you buy the land cash. This deal, since there's an existing house on it, it's a little bit easier. So you can get the traditional financing, or you can even do a bridge loan because it is a shorter term deal. There's all kinds of options, including with traditional lenders, DSCR loans, and even development bridge loans. And then as far as the financing goes, so typically our construction lenders, 90% of construction lenders out there are going to want to lend to the actual builder. So that's kind of the challenge we ran into when we originally launched the system is we only had like one or two lenders that would consider lending to an investor when they buy these properties and not the builder because I don't own it. And so we've actually established relationships now with several more lenders that have pretty deep pockets, pretty much unlimited funds that will finance to investors and not the builder. And then they basically are looking at me as the builder with the experience. Then they're looking at the investors' financials and everything, and going to underwrite it that way. So we've actually kind of solved that problem that we had previously. So we pretty much have unlimited funds. Not every lender is going to lend on every construction project, but we have a handful now that we can choose from, and the numbers typically speak for themselves on these deals. So as long as the numbers work, then the lender is typically going to finance it all day long. So I'm going to just go into a little bit of my background here, then we'll talk about how the deal list works, and then chat about this specific deal this week. So a little bit about me. My name is Zach Matson. I'm a developer and builder here in Boise, Idaho. I got started back in 2013. I bought my first duplex and house hack to live in one side, fixed up the other. And then bought another one a little less than 2 years after that before transitioning to flipping full time just shortly after that. And so I started that in 2016 and then got into infill development in 2019 with buying my first project. And then in 2020 and 2021, I've picked up a few more. And then realized I wanted to scale further, but there was, the market can kind of slow down when the interest rates raised. So I didn't buy anything from 2022 and 2023, but started seeing some really good deals in 2024. So picked up a couple more projects, and then basically at the beginning of last year, I realized that there was just so many deals out there that had a ton of opportunity for infill development. I couldn't possibly buy all of them on my own. So I basically created this system where we identify these properties that individual investors can buy. And then we underwrite them, we do the due diligence, and then the development and building. So we created the system in order to do this for investors. And so it's kind of been the journey over the last year and a half is doing this and launching it. So a little bit of details on our Infill Deal List system. So we have these weekly calls that we do that's open to anybody. But then we also have exclusive access to our Infill Deal List. And how you get exclusive access to this deal list full time, where you can see the deals all the time, you can see them as they're entered. As we, we're going to start, ad spending on this. So as we start doing this, these deals are going to, go a lot quicker, I think. Right now, it's just been like natural growth, but once we start actually presenting it out to the rest of the world, they're going to sell pretty quick. So the best way to get access to these quickly as soon as we put them on the list and underwrite them is having full-time access to the list. And so to do that, we work with investors and realtor partners. As a realtor, you can get access to the list for your clients. We just have you watch or attend in person when we occasionally do those. Our 3-part training series. Part 1 is all about infill development. Part 2 is our construction process, and then part 3 is just the details on how to look or analyze the infill deal list as you're looking at it. And then we just have you sign an agreement saying that if you're going to use or implement our strategies on these deals, that you'll introduce us to your buyer clients early on in the process. And that just essentially makes sure that we can get through all the due diligence and kind of understand your clients' needs and make sure that we can get these deals done the way that we anticipate doing them. And then as a bonus to realtors too, we offer free marketing campaigns that you can co-brand with us. So we have some lead magnets. We also have our weekly email that we send out that you can co-brand to send out to your network. So all that underwriting is done for you. You just cut and paste or copy and paste and send your information out along with ours to your buyer clients. Then if you're an investor, we kind of have you do the same type of training. So we have the parts 1, 2, and 3 that you can watch on our YouTube channel. And then we just make sure you have a buyer's representative agreement signed with a sponsoring realtor. And so if you already have a realtor that you're working with, you can bring them along. They just have to go through that same training and everything. If you don't already work with a realtor, we can connect you with one of ours that have been through the training process. The reason why we do that is because these deals are a little bit different or a lot different than a traditional home purchase. There's a lot more due diligence involved with them. We just want to make sure everybody's on the same page and understands the process and isn't getting into something or getting you into something that we can't back up with all of our guarantees, which I'll kind of cover here in a minute. And then we just have you sign an agreement saying that if you're going to use our strategies on these properties, that you're going to use our services as well. That's ultimately the big reason why we're doing this. Then how we make our money. So we're fully vertically integrated. So we do the due diligence. So we charge a consulting fee at the time of purchase, or if it's an extended close, we do it at the end of due diligence. And that covers basically our time and effort that we have into the front end of this. And then also through that due diligence process, we have about a 200-point due diligence checklist that we go through. We do 95% of that for you. And so that just covers our time and energy into that. Then we do the entitlements management. We just charge you an hourly rate for managing that. We still, work with all the professionals and everything, but there's just a lot of back and forth between professionals and then the different agencies. And so we just charge a management fee for that. And then we have our general contracting side that we do the horizontal and vertical construction on that. Okay, so how our system works here. So I created this, I call it the 6 figures in 36 months or less infill deal offer. So basically I created it just knowing that investors, don't know much about development. There's not a whole lot of information out there. I basically learned development on my own by just, pulling the trigger and going through my first deal and kind of learning the hard way on some stuff. And just really like kind of learning on my own because there's really isn't a lot of training out there. And the other thing too is, with development, a lot of it is, city specific too. So there's some, concepts that kind of go over the course of, anywhere, but a lot of it is agency and city specific. So we create these systems around specific areas, and then we adapt them for certain cities. So Basically, we just created the system, just understanding that investors don't want to lose money on a bad deal, or that they are nervous because they don't know the process, or worried about making a mistake. They're worried about projects dragging on too long or contractors cutting corners. And then probably the biggest one is just not having control or visibility in the deal. I know a lot of investors invest, passively in syndications. Not necessarily anything wrong with syndications, but we set up this system so that you have full control and visibility because you own the deal 100%. So it's a little bit different than that. And I do occasionally partner with people too, that we can talk about that on this on specific deals. But the way I set the system up is that's not necessary. So some of the core components of this, so we offer expert deal underwriting. So we help you in your realtor structure and present offers that will get accepted, and that works for everybody. And then we vet, analyze, and underwrite every infill deal on our list. And we're not just guessing numbers. We do these projects ourselves. We've done multiple of these. We have multiple in progress right now. And so it's, their current numbers based on what we know we need to do with the project. And then we offer step-by-step due diligence. That's that 200 point checklist that we go through with you. There's a couple of things that you check off on there, and a couple that your realtor does, but we do 95% of it. Then we give you access to that as soon as you have a deal under contract, so you can watch or follow along as we go through that due diligence process. And then if there's an existing house on the property, like this one today, we do the renovation on it as well. So we offer that as well. And then we do the entitlements management. So we manage that entitlements process. And then we do the horizontal and vertical development. So some of the bonuses you get, so you get our ultimate guide introduction to infill development. If you're on our email list, you should have gotten that in your first welcome email. And then we also give you our due diligence checklist. So once you are under contract, so we're gonna share that due diligence checklist with you. And then that leads to, at the end of due diligence or before the end of the due diligence, we're going to give you our underwriting worksheet. It's a one-page worksheet that basically has like all the details of that development, all the important details. And it's going to act as your final go or no go underwriting on the deal to make sure that you're getting the deal that you expect. And then we also base our guarantees on this one-page sheet. So then we're also going to provide you with our entitlements process checklist and projected timeline. So once we start entitlements, we'll give you that, so you can follow along. And then we're also going to do that for the construction process. And then on all of our new construction projects, we also do a third-party new home inspection report, and we're inspecting at 4 different phases. Number 1 is at the framing and rough-ins, and then we're going to do it at drywall, at the interior finishes, and then at the final as well. And that's just ensuring that you're going to get a perfect product, whether you're going to keep it as a rental or you're selling it. That can get extended then to the new buyers so that they can see what was going on even behind the walls, and anything that was a mistake or damaged or whatever, we make sure that we're turning over a perfect product. Then we back that up with our 1-year builder warranty. And then monthly, we do host our monthly progress call. It's actually the last Friday of every month, immediately after this call. So we're doing that this today. So we'll go over the progress that we made from the previous month on every deal that we have going on. And then we also do our guarantees. So this is where the guarantees come into place. Number 1 is our entitlements guarantee. So on a deal like today's deal, when we get through due diligence, we're going to have our final total unit count. Then we're going to back that up with our entitlements guarantee. So basically what that is if we don't achieve the unit count that we underwrite at final entitlement, we waive our next fee or apply that fee towards the development costs. And so we're certain that we can do these things. Our due diligence process is really dialed in. So but we basically back that up so that if something happens where we don't get it entitled the way we thought we could, then we get that money back to you or apply it towards something else. And then we have our underwriting guarantee. This is our profit guarantee. So this is kind of an insane deal, but basically what we do is we guarantee that if the project doesn't meet at least 100% of the projected profit at final underwriting, we're going to refund you up until it does. Now there is a limit to that. It's 20,000. Anything more than 2 units, it's 20,000 per home, up to $200,000 total. If it's 1 or 2 units, it's a 50,000 total per deal. So it's not, completely risk-free. There's no such thing as a risk-free investment. But what we do is we do this because we are confident in our numbers. We go in super conservatively. Our whole goal is to underpromise and overdeliver. So, when we give you that final profit number, our goal is to overshoot that. But we back it up so that if something happens either in the economy, something takes too long, or whatever, you have like a little bit of a floor there or additional buffer, where you're going to make that projected profit. Or you have the additional buffer before your money's at risk of not making money or not making as much as you thought. So the big thing with this, in your experience, is just that your role in it is you own the deal and you're making the big decisions. We're just doing all the heavy lifting. So essentially, you're hiring us to do everything for you. The timeline is 6 figures in 36 months or less. So depending on the deal, some of them, it's very rare to find like a 1 year deal. But we have had, I think, 2 of those since we started this. Most deals are closer to 3 years. The reason why we love cottages, is because the process with them is simplified, with the city. So the approvals are a lot quicker and the construction is a lot quicker. And I'll kind of get into that when we explain this particular deal. But it basically saves a year of development timeline and the returns are bigger. So that's why you get like outsized returns, compared to normal development projects. And then your protection is just because you own the deal already, or you own the deal. You're not investing in somebody else's deal, so you have full ownership. And then because we're backing it up with our profit guarantee, we also have skin in the game. All right, any questions about any of that before I jump into this week's deal and share my screen here? Okay. Okay, this is our deal list. So this week's deal, we underwrote this 2 different ways. This can actually be a traditional subdivision, and it can also be a cottage village. And I'm going to show you just why cottage villages are so powerful here, because ultimately you're saving time and you can do more units. But looking at it as the cottage village here, so basically with the way this is zoned, you have it's R1C zoning. In Boise, that means it's a maximum of 12.4 units an acre. So when we do that math, it leads to 13 total units on 1.064 acres. So because there's an existing house that we're going to keep on a cottage, we can maximize that density by adding 12 additional units. But if we don't do the cottages and we do a traditional subdivision, we can't maximize the density, because essentially you have the road and sidewalks and everything that you have to put in that eat into the possible space. And so you have minimum lot sizes when you do a traditional subdivision that you have to meet. And because of that, to meet those minimum lot sizes and then subtracting for the roads and sidewalks, ultimately you lose space, and the maximum we can get in here is 6 additional units. So that's still good. That's how we've always analyzed these deals in the past. It's just cottages are a new concept with the city of Boise. They codified it in December of 2023 when they did their new zoning. Rewrote the zoning code. And so it just provides additional opportunity. So traditional subdivision, typically you have, it's 3 phases. You have entitlements, which is basically just getting the project approved. There's a couple different steps with that. Number 2 is the development. So that's where you put in all the utilities. And then number 3 is the vertical, where you're actually building the homes. Each one of those typically takes a year to start and exit. So during the entitlements, it takes a year to get approved. The development, it only takes like 4 to 6 months to do the construction, but then it takes another 3 to 6 months to get the plat signed. And then that final phase of vertical, it's typically 6 to 7 months to build the homes, but then you have to have a few months to exit. On a development or a cottage development, The reason why it's a year quicker is because the approvals are administrative only. So you don't have to go to Planning and Zoning Commission. You don't have to go to City Council. It's an administrative decision with the staff of Planning and Zoning. So those approvals come quick. You still have to get the civil engineering approved. That's why it's like, 6 to 9 months approvals instead of, well, it's usually about 9 months approvals instead of like 3 months, because you have to go through that civil engineering process. But it's a 9-month approval instead of 12. Then you can actually do the horizontal infrastructure at the same time that you do the vertical. So, or right after another. Logistically, it's hard to put in all the horizontal stuff at the same time you're going vertical. It might be possible on this site because because you have centralized location where all the utilities are going to be. But there's basically some difficulty with it. So typically what we do look at is, okay, we're going to do the horizontal. It's going to take 3 months to do that, but then we can immediately go into the construction. And with 13 units or 12 units, we'd probably just do rolling starts. So you have about probably 9 months of construction from start to finish there. So you have 12 months, basically to exit or build and exit, or yeah, I guess 15 months, and that brings it to the total of 2 years. So yeah, essentially with this, your 2 years to exit. Now, depending on the market, we might decide, okay, instead of doing rolling starts, like if the market slows down, maybe you do 2 different phases or 3 different phases. So this timeline can go a little bit up depending on the market. But what we try to do with these, we try to get some of them pre-sold. And then we analyze the market before we start construction and see how quickly they'll sell, because we don't want to build a bunch that'll be sitting on the market. We want them to sell basically as they get finished. And so that's why the rolling start is typically a great idea. And these price points are basically perfect price points for Boise for entry-level housing. We actually have these analyzed at 425,000 on a resale for the cottages, and that's for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home. It's 1,000 living square feet. When you actually do so when you calculate the square footage, it's the city looks at square footage differently than you do when you list them. So it's 1,000 square feet living, which is internal floor area. But then when you actually measure it for a listing, it ends up being closer to 1,100. So it's essentially an 1,100 square foot house, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, for 425 on the resale, which is basically in the bottom 5% of listings. So we anticipate they'll sell like really, really quickly. Especially this neighborhood. It's just great neighborhoods, close to the foothills, close to everything over there. Okay, so the purchase price we have 900,000. I would suggest if somebody's interested in this deal, this might be slightly overpriced just because the existing house is probably only worth 550 in its condition. Now they don't actually have any pictures of the house. The way the way it seems is it probably needs a bit of work. So we have a healthy budget to remodel. So we're kind of expecting the worst there. But if somebody's interested in buying this, I would actually attempt to get this closer to what the house itself is worth. They're obviously placing some value in the land, and we try to get that for as close to free as possible. Most of the time you don't get it completely free, but sometimes you can get it pretty close. But on this one, so if you look at the price per lot essentially, or price per unit that you're paying for the land, it's 29,000 on the cottages, which is really good for that neighborhood. It's 50,000 for a regular development. Both of these are pretty good for that area. Depending on the area of town, it's probably a little high. I think ultimately this is a pretty good price considering everything, but ideally you could get it for a little bit lower. Okay, and then we have their entitlement cost per unit, the development cost per unit, and I think I was a little bit off on this number. This is actually based on some really recent cottages, basically the same kind of setup that we're already doing. And then if you exit it at entitlements, or sorry, at build out before you go vertical, this is what we anticipate per unit that you can sell the project for. So you could, exit at after the horizontal is done and sell it to a builder. We typically like to see the project all the way through, but if something changed, we just underwrite that to make sure you're not as at risk. And then we have the vertical construction cost per unit, and then your total all in per unit, and your projected profit per unit. So these are actually really good profits per unit after all expenses. So this is profit per unit. So this is after like our fees. It's after sales commissions. It's after what we anticipate your loan costs are going to be on the horizontal and vertical. So that's factoring in all expenses, profit per unit, and then that relays over to your total profit over here. Now, what we do look at too then is the existing house. So we look at the existing house renovation. So this is the renovation of the existing house, and then the after repaired value. So we think the actual value of this house, if it's nice, is going to be closer to 800,000. Might even be a little bit more because it does back a golf course, but then you have your sales costs with that, and then your holding costs. What this is based on is the mortgage based on putting 30% down and carrying that for 2 years, and then at the very end fixing it up and selling it individually, and then this is renting it out during that time frame of after you buy it. Now, it might be that you have to, buy it with a flip loan. So if it does need a ton of work in order to rent out, it'd be the same type of deal. You would just buy it with a flip loan, do that flip on the front end, and then convert it into longer term debt. And then this just gets reversed. So you're doing it's the same, basically the same amount. It's just that you're putting a little bit more in the front end versus on the tail end. And then you do lose money on the existing house. The reason why that is ultimately because you're not going to get as much. Now, this rent would actually be higher too, probably over 2 years if you fix it up first. But either way, so the reason why you kind of lose money on the existing house, assuming that the market doesn't increase a lot over the 2 years that you hold it, is because you have sales costs here, and then you just have the difference between your holding costs and the rental income. So that's why you kind of take a little bit of a hit. You're not selling it at a profit. And that's most of these deals. You lose a little bit of money on the existing house just because of holding and sales costs. But then you make the profit on the tail end with the houses that you're building. And then we look at, so this is if you refinanced all the debt at the end on the cottages. So that is the what the construct basic refinancing the construction loan. So that's your portion of the land cost, and then the horizontal and vertical construction costs. And then we just do this because we want to look and compare it with what our loan to value and loan to cost numbers are. This is more firm than anything. The 70% loan to value, most lenders are going to cap out right at about here. Some of them will go up to 75. But this number and this number are actually really good. So this is only 40,000 more than this number. And I have ways of getting this number down for the lender that they'll be able to finance basically this amount, like this 4130 all day long. And you'll be able to complete the project without additional capital out of pocket from what we underwrote. This loan to cost number, sometimes they do look at this. This is what this is on the low end. A lot of lenders are going to go up to 85 or 90% loan to cost. So if we look at those numbers again, it works out pretty well where you don't have to come up with a ton of money out of pocket. And then the other thing with this too is, again, there's levers I can pull that make these numbers match up for the lender. Okay, so total we have about 460,000 out of pocket. And this isn't all up front. It's 30% down on the purchase. And again, if you can get the purchase price lower, let's say you get it close to 750 or something, that's less money out of pocket and more profit. And then it also is our fee at close. And then over the course of The next 9 months, you have the entitlements with that. Once it's entitled, then you're not, the way this is structured, you don't have any additional out-of-pocket money on the construction. So on the horizontal and vertical, the lender is typically going to finance 100% of the construction, and then there's enough money in there or enough padding in there that you can actually finance the interest in those loans as well. So they call it a construction reserve or an interest reserve. And so most construction lenders do that, and they actually want to structure it that way because it's less risky for them. And so they basically have an interest reserve account that whatever your interest payments are, instead of making those monthly interest payments, they actually just pull it from that interest reserve. The downside is you're paying interest on interest, but it's like it basically adds up to a few $1,000s extra at the end. To me, it's well worth doing that versus having to make those monthly payments that get larger and larger as you go. And then this also covers your out-of-pocket expenses on the difference between what you're getting for rent and the mortgage that you're paying on the loan. But again, this number could be actually a lot lower too. Like, we're pretty conservative, but this number could be lower too, because if you do that, ultimately that existing house is going to go into the construction loan at some point. So you might be able to do that with no money out of pocket after it's entitled to. So you pay interest on the first 9 months or 12 months of it. But after that, theoretically, you could actually roll that interest into the construction loan as well. And then you're actually positive cash flow every month, and your out of pocket is a lot less. And then the other way we analyze every one of these deals too is we just do like a quick analysis of, okay, what if you wanted to keep one of the units, what does that look like? So if you sold everything and kept one of the units, you would have 175,000 back. Or you get 175,000 back. This would be the capital you'd have invested in that. Now you could refinance that into a long-term loan. And then your monthly payment and your cash flow is about so your cash flow every month, sorry, is about $1,400 a month on that. Or if you have it professionally managed, that's what these numbers are. So about $900 cash flow, and then your cap rates on that. I'm going to show the one-page deal sheet here. And I'll show you this actual site plan. So I have, AI is great because you can get stuff rendered quickly and for free. So anyway, this is what the cottages we can make the cottages look like. This is 1,000 square foot cottage. This rendering is kind of a concept of what the site could look like. We actually have two single-story houses facing the road, the main road, and then some other 10 more cottages in the back. And I'll show you the actual site plan because this isn't really accurate, but it gives you an idea of kind of what it would look like. So this is your total, what this total, the totals look like. So you have a 460,000 total cash investment. You get 1.12 million back. That's including your original investment. So it's a 2.4x equity multiple, 65% IRR. Honestly, like these numbers are kind of insane. Most development deals, most really good development deals are like 35% IRR. When you look at a lot of different syndications, normally those are like 18% or so, and you have to be accredited investors. The thing with the structure on this too is you don't have to be an accredited investor. Now, most of the time, the people that are buying these deals are just accredited because that's the people that have this kind of capital to invest. But you don't have to be an accredited investor, and you don't have to, get confirmed that you're an accredited investor because you're buying the deal. It's not my deal that you're investing into. It's your deal. You're buying it. You're just hiring us to do everything. So your total cash profit, if you sell everything, so the total return with that profit and capital, so 2.43x equity multiple. it's 2 years. Then just kind of goes over the recap of what I was talking about. And then all these construction numbers, or all these total costs involve, or that covers the R fees, and it also covers the construction interest is in there as well. So on the closing, on this one, it's a little over 300,000 at closing, and then the rest of that 150 is over the course of 2 years. We'll stop this share and then go over to the actual site plan. Okay, so this is the site plan we sketched up here. So this is Pierce Park Lane. The city will make us put in detached sidewalks. I believe it's going to be 10-foot sidewalks there. So that's accounting for the 10-foot sidewalks. And then we have two larger single-story houses up front. And then we have 10 two-story cottages behind them. Now, these are all going to be, so they're all maximum 1,000 square feet. Now that's internal square feet. So again, they're like, when you go to list them, they're actually going to be closer to 1,100 square feet on the listing. And the neat thing with this project too is the way we have this drawn up, each one's going to have private backyards, and we can actually, they're not going to, so the biggest thing with these these cottage developments is it's on a condo plat. So they don't own the land or own the lot that it sits on. They basically own a share in the condominium plat or the land, but they don't own the land. What we can do though is on that plat is we can actually say, okay, this is your private backyard. So you don't own this yard, but it's your private backyard, and that's set aside in the HOA docs. So each unit has their own private backyard. It's not a huge backyard, but it's basically like a 10-foot backyard that you can put a patio and then like a little grass area for pets. And then there's, kind of some common space as well. And then on this one, so the minimum parking here is only one per unit. In certain neighborhoods, we like to do more than that because they're more like there's more people that drive. Like this is one of those neighborhoods where there's going to be probably more cars. So we actually have one single car garage for each unit, and then we have one parking space additionally for each unit. And I think you can park along Pierce Park too. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you can on the shoulder. So that's a possibility, but we have basically 2 units or 2 parking spots for every unit. The existing house has a 2-car garage, and then it also have 2 parking spaces on its own as well. So that would retain its 4 parking spaces. And then we have the internal circulation road and everything and fire turnaround. And then let me see, let me stop my share here. Any questions with any of that? I'm going to see if I can pull up the overhead. Earlier it wasn't working. But I was going to show you if it'll pull up. I was going to show you where the other cottage development is, because I actually just met with these guys yesterday, but there's another developer here that's actually building out 12 cottages, like literally 600 feet away from this project. And I think theirs is the first official cottage development that's not NeighborWorks. So NeighborWorks is a nonprofit company here in Boise, and so they've done some of these cottage developments. There's usually about one a year that's coming online from them. So there are comps for this, but then there's these guys I think are doing the first development that's not a NeighborWorks development, where they're gonna sell it more traditionally like this, where it's just individual units and there's no income restrictions or anything like that. That's the main difference with the NeighborWorks, which actually works in our favor because they're limited. They limit or they have income limitations on there, so they sell to only customers that meet the 80% of AMI or less. And then they also don't they do land leases, so it's just a little bit different. There's still good comparables, but these are actually, this system is better for the mass market. The overheads it'll pull up eventually, but it's gonna take a minute here still. Here we go. Let me share the screen again. Okay, so this is the assessor site. This is the property here. I like this overhead too because it shows so this is the golf course here that it backs up to. Um, so the existing house backs right up to it. And then the neighbor work, or not the neighbor works, this other developer that's doing the cottages is just like four lots over. Lost it. Here we go. So it's, where did it go? There's this 5,600. So it's in here somewhere. I think it might be this property right here, or this one. This property right here. So this is getting redeveloped. So right now, I think it's all cleared out. So it's this property right here, kind of at the bottom of the screen here. And then our property is just up here on the next lot north of this. So just up the street. So right here. And then this Bluebird Lane, these are new construction houses a few years ago. I think 2023 is when they got sold. So this is also backing more new construction, which is always good. So yeah, great location. Pierce Park Lane has been redeveloped a lot in the last couple of years. There's a lot of new construction. And then Hill Road is right here, and you have access to the foothills just, a few minutes drive away. Okay, any questions with this deal before I jump into a couple other things that I was going to chat about?
Hey Zach, I had a question.
Yeah.
The I guess the whole model around the cottage is, I mean, it's similar to a condo model. Um, just curious, why don't you use the condo model? Is it a planning development issue, or is it
Well,
height
it,
requirements, or
well, it is a condo plat, but you don't, it's not a condo building, like all one unit. Number one is because you'll have like the resale prices will be higher, if they're detached. And it's going to feel more like a detached single family home. It'll just be, less upkeep for those buyers, which is, I think, the target market for these buyers. They're going to be either first time home buyers that are coming from apartments that, already don't take care of yards. They're going to be, busy professionals that don't necessarily want that upkeep, or people downsizing that also don't want the upkeep. So there's kind of some benefits with that. But yeah, it's basically a condo plat, so it kind of works the same way as a condo does, but it's not a condo building. And part of that too is because uh, condos are considered multifamily, and in the zoning, you can't actually do multifamily like a large apartment complex, which is what a condo complex would be, without getting like a conditional use permit. So that's part of it too. But ultimately, the profitability, I think, is higher on the detached single family, and it's a little bit more cohesive with the rest of the neighborhood because it'll look like a normal subdivision essentially. Does that kind of answer that question? Is that kind of what you're going for there?
yeah, sort of. I've seen communities built though, like where they have maybe 2 to 4 units per building, where it's not like a big tower like a lot of people think, it's more of like a smaller duplex,
Yeah,
triplex, fourplex
like
style,
fourplexes. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's certainly a possibility. I mean, you could do it like you could do that. You could do like townhome type development, where it's like so it's 12 units. You could do like three fourplexes essentially. Um, and then, yeah, so typically when we look at those, they don't usually pencil out as well, as, so it's less to build, but they'd also sell for less. So they typically don't pencil out as well as detached units. And that's ultimately just like kind of the difference between the build cost and the sales price.
Okay.
But it is something you could do on it.
Hmm.
Yeah, don't necessarily have anything against it other than just I think it's more profitable to do it this way. Okay, so I wanted to cover really quick. So we had a deal of the week last week that's still on the market, but what's kind of cool about it and or what's different about it today is just this week. So it's this deal here. It takes more cash because it's just a land deal. And ultimately, I think maybe, we can get this price down a little bit, but assuming the price doesn't change. So this is another cottage development, and you can actually profit $1 million on it. But what changed this week that I wanted to cover really quick is that the subdivision, or sorry, the property literally right in front that, so this is kind of a flag lot, but the property right in front of this, where did it go? Came on the market this week. So it's a duplex. It's a 2-1 duplex. Came on the market for 599, which is probably about its value is at. But we can actually do a lot line adjustment. So somebody could buy this duplex, do a lot line adjustment, give more land to this other property behind it, and basically add 2 more units. So essentially, you could have two different buyers, number one, and then this property, they could essentially just take the profits from these two additional units, or one person could buy it. They could get a traditional loan on this duplex and then do the land as well. But then basically what you would do, that if you turn this into now 25 units, your cost per unit goes down, and the cost don't, like, it doesn't increase the cost at all aside from just the cost to build. So now this deal last week went from making 1 million to making 1.2 million. um And the reason why that is again, you're basically the development or the site doesn't change. It's just you have extra land now. You can add 2 more units. So your entitlement costs go down, your entitlement cost per unit go down, your build or your development cost per unit go down. Your build cost per unit is the same, but you have more units. So your profitability per unit goes up, and then you add 2 more units. So um, yeah, I'll have to double check these numbers because that doesn't sound exactly right that it went up by 200,000, but it went up by at least 100,000 um, from this normal one if you bought two properties. And then the other thing you could do, so if you have two investors that are looking to buy deals, and maybe someone doesn't have as much cash, and they want a duplex out of the deal, they could buy this duplex and then essentially participate along with the land deal, and basically make 100 grand off of the duplex, just by doing a lot line adjustment and giving that extra land to the development behind it. And so that's a really cool play. I might do, if I get some people kind of interested in this, I might do another Zoom call specifically on this deal to talk more details, or it might be another deal of the week if they both last. But this could be a really cool deal. Ultimately, these both hinge on, being able to rezone, which, I talked a lot extensively about this last week, but I think we could rezone it pretty easily. And especially because it's two parcels right next to each other, I think that just increases the chances of rezoning it. And then we just put everything contingent on being able to rezone. Okay. Actually, I'm gonna go back to sharing the screen here. So we've a few investors that are looking for single family deals, like where we just split off a single lot. And some of those, a lot of times the single lot splits take less capital because it's the lower purchase prices. They're not as extensive costs. But so I thought got excited because there's like 4 or 5 of these added this week, 5 of them added just this week to the market. But 3 of them take pretty close to the same amount of capital as what you'd have to do on these cottage developments, and you're not getting as much return. One of them would actually lose money. There's one deal that would take less than 200,000 capital, but you're only getting 60,000 back. So, but if somebody, if somebody's working with less capital, there's, different ways they can do this. Number one is do one of these deals, and maybe you're not making 100 grand, but you're making some money. And, chances are most of the time, especially the way the market's going right now, most likely when you go to resell these, 2 or 3 years down the road, you're actually gonna make more than what we're projecting here. Um, so we don't underwrite it that way, but a lot of times it ends up that way. Or, if you're sitting on a couple 100 grand, we've had investors already kind of start talking about partnering up and JVing on these bigger deals. So if you have, some friends or family members that, have some extra capital and they want to JV with you, you're still owning the deal, but then you're setting it up as a partnership or whatever. It's, just a little bit different structure, but that's another way to basically participate in some of these larger deals is, either putting your own partnership together or, with other investor capital, or, maybe you structure it where you still own it, or you're just borrowing the money. So there's different ways to do that. And if anybody's interested in talking through that, I'm happy to have conversations on the side there. So I think that's everything I wanted to cover this week. Does anybody have any questions on specific deals or how anything works or anything like that?
Hey Zach, is anyone proposing the cottage model in the Garden City area? Or is that specific to Boise?
It's specific to the Boise zoning code, but I mean, you live in Garden City, so you know that there's multiple cottages. It's a little bit different because it's a traditional subdivision there. So the main
Uh-huh.
difference between Garden City and Boise is there's no minimum lot size in Garden City for their zoning. So you can do a cottage and it doesn't have to sit on any certain size land. And so they can actually own the land. But the difference with Boise is you have to have a minimum lot size. And so when you do the cottages in Boise, it doesn't work out as a subdivision because they don't meet the minimum lot size. So similar concept, it's just a different plat. So it's like a condo plat in Boise, and it's quicker that way too, but it's the main difference is just that they don't own the land. All right. If we don't have any other questions, I appreciate you guys hopping on. And if you have any, additional questions that come up or you want to look at a specific deal or anything like that, feel free to reach out to me personally through email or through one of my channels, either on social media or YouTube or something. But yeah, appreciate you guys hopping on. Hope you have a great weekend.
You have a good one.
Yeah, you too.